secret I'm going to tell you. I ain't going to tell nobody else, not a soul. It's about my...
Country once bragged about being America's music, but the same stars singing about faith and freedom banned black artists, mocked immigrants, and backed segregation on live TV. For decades, Nashville kept their names clean. So why did nobody talk about it? And who finally broke the silence? Number 20, Johnny Cash. He fought for the underdog, sang about native rights, and took heat for prison concerts. But early on, Johnny Cash had a blind spot he rarely talked about. In the 1950s, Cash gave radio interviews using racially outdated terms that aged like milk. In one, he described white and black performers with different instincts and blamed cultural limits for genre separation. This was before he became the Man in Black. In 1964, something shifted. Bitter Tears dropped like a hammer. The entire album defended Native Americans. Radio stations refused to play it. He mailed letters to DJs demanding they grow a conscience. So what happened in those years between ignorance and defiance? That part of Cash's story is buried deep, but real. He never publicly apologized for those early comments, but he spent decades trying to outgrow them. One Opry icon never did try. She doubled down when asked to change. Number 19, Minnie Pearl.
Secret I'm going to tell you. I ain't going to tell nobody else, not a soul. It's about my...
She wore a hat with the price tag dangling and made generations laugh. But while Minnie Pearl smiled in public, she stood on a stage where black artists weren't allowed to stand with her. In the 1960s, a civil rights protest reached the front doors of Nashville institutions. Minnie defended the Grand Ole Opry's whites-only stage policy. She reportedly called it the Southern Way. Pearl avoided politics in her act, but backstage she was vocal. According to fellow performers, she believed desegregating the Opry would confuse audiences. Even into the 1970s, she never publicly supported black country singers like Charlie Pride. Did she evolve later? Maybe, but she never said so. Her silence became louder as history moved on. While Minnie held the door shut, another name on this list locked it from the outside and did it with jokes. Number 18, Buck Owens. He was sharp, quick, and made hee-haw America's corniest obsession. But behind Buck Owens's bright grin were lines that cut deep, especially for black and Mexican artists watching from the sidelines. During the 1950s and 60s, Owens used racial punchlines in both live shows and TV appearances. One sketch featured a Mexican farmer speaking in broken English. Another mocked black blues singers as offbeat and wild. These weren't ad-libs. Writers recorded them. Tapes exist. An audience laughed, and Buck never flinched. Later in life, friends say he regretted it, but he never said so publicly. His records still play on classic country radio. His face still smiles in reruns, but those harmless gags landed like bricks if you weren't white. Another star went even further. He didn't joke about race. He built his whole business around separating it. Number 17, Webb Pierce.
I had a friend named Ramblin' Bob who used to steal, gamble, and rob.
Webb Pierce ruled the 50s with rhinestone suits, steel guitars, and a string of hits that topped country charts for over a decade. But his Nashville nightclub had one rule that didn't show up on the sign: no black audiences. In 1957, Webb opened a high-profile venue just blocks from Music Row. It was built for fans of live country music, as long as they were white. When asked why, he said he didn't want trouble from mixed crowds. Black musicians tried to book gigs there. Some were turned down without explanation. Others said the staff just disappeared after they showed up to talk business. It wasn't until the late 1960s, under legal pressure, that things changed. His name's still in the Country Music Hall of Fame, but that door took a long time to open for everybody else. Meanwhile, One man didn't just shut the door, he mocked you as he slammed it. Number 16, Faron Young.
If you got a Cadillac, boy, and a 40-room shack, boy.
Faron Young could light up a room and empty it just as fast. With a slick smile and a drink in hand, he told stories that kept bandmates howling until the punchlines turned ugly. On tour buses, in green rooms, and live on stage, Faron used racial slurs like punctuation. Multiple musicians, including former band members, recall him mocking black singers and cracking jokes with Confederate flags nearby. He brushed it all off as cowboy humor. That's what they called it in the 1960s. But it wasn't just private talk. During one show in Georgia, a reporter quoted Faron calling a black band jungle rhythm players. Nobody corrected him. His fans chalked it up to alcohol, but over 2 decades, the pattern never changed. One guitarist was watching all of this from the side and later turned it into a full-blown stereotype business on screen. Number 15, Jerry Reed.
If I listened long enough to you, I'd find a way to believe that it's...
He could play guitar faster than most could blink, and fans loved him for that funny, carefree energy. But behind the laughs and wild charm, Jerry Reed kept playing one role over and over, the loud Southern white guy who never learned when the joke ended. In his 1970s comedy skits and films like Smokey and the Bandit, Reed often leaned into stereotypes that didn't sit right, especially today. Some scenes poked fun at black speech, others used slurs masked as backwoods banter, and when it wasn't race, it was foreign accents he mocked for laughs. These weren't side moments, they were central to his on-screen persona. Scripts, backed by big studios, had him calling Asian characters slurs in buddy cop routines. One critic wrote in 1981 that Jerry's jokes felt 20 years behind the times. The problem was, they weren't behind. They were right on time for what Hollywood allowed then. But some country stars didn't just perform the racism, they wrote it into full skits and albums. Number 14, Ferlin Husky.
On the wings of a snow white dove, he sends his pure sweet love.
Ferlin Husky loved characters. He jumped between voices and accents on stage, switching from cowboy crooner, the fake preacher, to slapstick fool, and sometimes into full-blown racist impersonations. During his peak in the 1950s, Ferlin performed Negro preacher routines on live radio. The voices were exaggerated, mocking, and filled with Southern minstrel stereotypes straight from vaudeville playbooks. He'd joke about lazy men with big feet or fast-talking colored folks, and nobody stopped him. Those jokes made it into early country radio. They were even stored in scripts at the Country Music Hall of Fame. Not hidden, not rare, but part of the show. Ferlin never publicly apologized, not once, even as country evolved. He died a legend, but left behind a long paper trail of characters that today would shut down a stage. Another legend did more than just perform the lines, he lived them off stage, even when sober. Number 13, George Jones.
I'm just a little bit older than they are, but I don't need no rocking chair.
They called him the Possum, and he lived up to the name with a messy, rowdy life full of talent and wreckage. But when George Jones drank, something else came out besides slurred songs and missed shows. In multiple interviews during the 1970s, Jones used racial slurs when describing black musicians. One taped conversation with a reporter in 1973 captured him saying, "That ain't music, that's jungle racket." He laughed, nobody else did. Jones later said those words were just how folks talked where I'm from. That was his defense, but fans noticed he never once said sorry. He never tried to fix it, not in public, not in his music. His records still went gold. His face stayed on TV, but that part of George, the part that talked like it was still 1945, never left him. And the next man, He was worse. He backed policies meant to keep things that way forever. Number 12, Roy Acuff.
From the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore, from the queen of flowing mountains to the...
Roy Acuff wasn't just a country star, he was a power broker. The man was known as the king of country music, and for a while he tried to be a kingmaker too.
The king of country music from the Grand Ole Opry, Roy Acuff.
But his politics had a sharp line: white, rural, and resistant to change. During the 1960s civil rights era, Acuff ran for office in Tennessee and opposed several integration measures. Behind closed doors, and sometimes not so closed, he reportedly told allies he wanted to keep country music white and Southern. Several Opry members confirmed that Acuff fought behind the scenes to block black acts from joining the stage lineup. There's no apology on record, not even a soft walk back in later years. His legacy holds medals, honors, status, but also a heavy silence around who got kept out under his watch. Yet the next man didn't bother with quiet. His racism showed right on the microphone. Number 11, Red Foley.
When the love bug bites, you don't know where to scratch. It keeps right on a biting.
Red Foley helped shape what the Grand Ole Opry sounded like, but also who got to be heard, and that wasn't everyone. In the 1940s and early 50s, Foley was one of the biggest country names alive, but multiple musicians from that era said Red had a personal rule: no black performers on the same stage. He didn't say, "I won't play with them," he just refused a bill unless they were removed. He never denied it. In fact, when asked once why he performed all white shows, he replied, "That's what the crowd comes for." It worked. He stayed popular, booked, and untouchable. Meanwhile, black artists who tried to push in were told they weren't the right fit. And while Red held the line, another man signed his name on petitions and wore the blackface himself. Number 10, Porter Wagoner.
I pictured pink champagne by candlelight.
Porter Wagoner loved flash, rhinestone suits, bright lights, the biggest country show on TV. But off camera, his rules weren't as shiny. In the early 60s, his producers said he banned black artists from appearing on The Porter Wagoner Show. His reason? He said the audience wouldn't understand. It wasn't a rumor. Crew members later confirmed it, and so did guests who tried to book spots but never got callbacks. The same show that helped launch Dolly Parton's career wouldn't let a single black musician through its doors. When integration became law, Porter quietly dropped the rule. No apology, no comment. But the silence spoke loud. His show ran for 21 years, beamed into millions of homes, and for most of that time, it showed only one kind of face. Still, there was one man who didn't hide his segregation. He signed it proudly and wore it in public. Number 9, Tex Ritter.
Do not forsake me, oh my darling.
Tex Ritter was the image of old America. Clean-cut cowboy, deep voice, songs about honor and heart. But in the 1950s, when country music was starting to open its doors, Tex was one of the men keeping them shut. He literally signed petitions against integrating the Grand Ole Opry. He called it a Southern tradition and warned it would ruin the culture. On stage, he even took part in minstrel-style performances, painting his face black for patriotic theater. Photos exist. The audience cheered. Those choices followed him long after. Younger artists later said Ritter used his influence to keep black acts off major shows. He died in 1974, never speaking on it again. But Tex stood for segregation in politics. The next man turned it into applause and made racism part of his campaign trail. Number 8, Ernest Tubb.
I love you because you never doubt me. But
Ernest Tubb was loved for singing to the blue-collar South. He sounded like one of them, plain, strong, proud. But in 1968, he showed the world who he really stood beside. segregationist Governor George Wallace. Tubb spoke at Wallace rallies, even performing before speeches where Wallace preached against race mixing. Fans were shocked. This was the man who sung about unity and hard work, but Tubb said he believed Wallace understood Southern people. In radio interviews that year, Tubb also argued that music should stay pure, meaning white. That comment hit hard because the country was already borrowing from blues and soul. He never walked it back. Even after the Civil Rights Act, Ernest stayed quiet, pretending it was just politics. But the truth stuck. And if Ernest blurred the line between pride and prejudice, the next man lived that contradiction for decades and tried to fix it too late. Number 7, Hank Snow.
Mr. Fireman, won't you please listen to me? 'Cause I got a pretty mama in Tennessee. Keep moving me on.
Hank Snow came from Nova Scotia, not Nashville. But by the 1940s, he was a country king, touring the South with packed crowds. Behind the fame, though, he had one hard rule: no black acts on his bill. He said audiences don't want that. That line kept blues artists, the very roots of country music, off his tours for years. In the 70s, something changed. Hank worked with Charlie Pride, country's first major black superstar, calling him the best voice in Nashville. It felt like guilt turning into grace. He even helped sponsor Pride at the Opry when others hesitated. But fans never forgot his early days. He never apologized, but he tried to prove it with actions. That kind of turn was rare, because the next man didn't turn around at all. He went louder, angrier, and proudly stood by every word. Number 6, Charlie Daniels.
Johnny rising up here, blowing, playing fiddle hard, 'cause hell's broke loose in Georgia and the devil deals the cards.
Charlie Daniels sold himself as a patriot, but sometimes his patriotism came with poison. In the 1980s, he said America should be for Americans first. It sounded harmless until he started explaining what that meant. His songs and interviews slammed immigrants, Muslims, and outsiders. After 9/11, he wrote a blog post warning that Islam wasn't a religion of peace. Critics called it fear-mongering. Daniel said he was just telling the truth. He never apologized, not once. Even when fans pushed back, he doubled down. "If that offends you," he told a reporter in 2003, "you're part of the problem." That line summed him up: proud, firing, and unwilling to question himself. His music stayed popular. His flag stayed flying, but his message got louder with age. And if Charlie used words like weapons, the next legend turned his into headlines that split America right down the middle. Number 5, Merle Haggard.
The good time's really over for good.
Merle Haggard made one of the most famous country songs ever, Okie from Muskogee. It was 1969. Vietnam was exploding. Protesters filled the streets, and Merle stood on the other side. The lyrics laughed at hippies, pot smokers, long-haired kids, and anti-war activists. But underneath those lines was something deeper. The hippies he mocked weren't just stoners, they were also civil rights marchers, college students fighting racism, people risking their lives in the South. When black activists spoke up, Merle called them whiners in interviews. He once said they think the world owes them. Later in life, he softened. He said he didn't mean the song to hurt anyone, but it already had. It sold over 1 million copies. It got standing ovations. It became an anthem for people who wanted to push back against change. If Merle masked racism as patriotism, the next icon didn't mask anything at all. Number 4, Hank Williams Sr.
I try so hard, my dear, to show that you're mine.
He was country's first god. Hank Williams Sr. could write pain into poetry, but before the heartbreak songs, he was singing something else entirely, minstrel tunes. In the early 1940s, Hank performed in traveling minstrel shows across Alabama. He wore blackface. He sang novelty songs that mocked African American voices and culture. He wasn't alone. This was common then, but it shaped the roots of country music. Some of those performances used jokes with thick, fake accents and lines about lazy darkies and watermelon-eating fools. These weren't side gigs. They were full acts that paid the bills before fame. No recordings exist, but show bills and ads confirm it. Later, Hank left that behind. His major songs never included those voices again. But the stain was there, a young artist trained in a system that mocked black folks for applause. But the next Hank, he didn't leave it behind. He made it louder. Number 3, Hank Williams Jr.
Over the hill, that's one place I won't go.
He was born into legacy, but Hank Jr. built his own storm. In 2011, live on Fox and Friends, he compared President Obama to Hitler. Yes, he said those two names in the same sentence. ESPN dropped him from Monday Night Football that week. But that wasn't the first time he stirred things up. For years, Hank Jr. mixed race, politics, and Southern anger in his lyrics and rants. He called critics un-American. He defended Confederate flags. He once told fans to keep your country white and proud. Even as fans left, he doubled down. One concert in 2012 had banners calling Obama the enemy. His merch sold anyway. He kept playing to packed houses, just not all the old ones. The country got split. Hank didn't care. And if he stirred trouble on national TV, the next name built a whole career out of hate songs and never hid once. Number 2, Johnny Rebel.
If I had wings like an angel over these prison.
This man didn't toe the line. He crossed it, burned it, and made records about it. Clifford Joseph Trahan, known as Johnny Rebel, made music so vile that most stores refused to stock it. He recorded songs with titles like Some N-Words Never Die and Coontown. His lyrics praised the KKK. This wasn't hidden. He printed the words right on his album sleeves. His songs were sold through catalogs and played on underground racist radio stations across the South. He started in the early 1960s and kept recording into the 2000s. Some fans tried to say it was satire, but Trahan himself confirmed he meant every word. He called integration the start of the downfall. Despite that, his album sold thousands. They're still traded in hate forms today. But even with all that poison, there's one man whose mainstream success made the damage wider and louder. Number 1, David Allan Coe. David Allan Coe had no filter, and in 1982 he took it way too far. His underground album included songs with racial slurs, graphic violence, and sexual threats, especially against black people. Titles like NR, FR, and One N-Word weren't hidden. They were proudly pressed on vinyl and sold at truck stops and biker bars. Coe called it comedy, but even outlaw country stars said he went too far. Waylon Jennings refused to work with him after hearing the album. Radio networks banned him outright. Coe didn't apologize. In fact, he told Spin magazine, "If you don't like it, don't listen." He kept performing, fans kept showing up, but his reputation never recovered. Today, he's mostly remembered for crossing the line too far and never coming back. Every song has two sides, melody and memory. Thanks for staying till the end and facing the hard parts of the country's past. Subscribe, keep digging, and next time we'll talk about the scandals Nashville still refuses to admit ever happened.